the Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We are talking college football, and we are working our way through our preseason top 25. It is the summertime. All of these teams got off to really hot starts last year. Can they continue that momentum as well? I'm joined by my co-host for the fifth season. We're at 5, halfway to 10. I'm joined by my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Pat's doing great. We talked about 21 through 25 in our last episode. Now we're moving 20 through 16. We're starting, in my opinion, about 12 through 20, maybe even 12 through 22, all could be shuffled up and dealt and put in about the same kind of order. You could move a spot here or there. The transfer portal being so wide open these days, we had I think there was a couple thousand in January during the bowl games, which I'll save my anger about the transfer portal during January, during the playoff, for another episode. But all the players getting in the portal and then NIL money being used to draw players in, guys having agents, the turnover on these rosters is immense. And as we saw last year with Arizona State, I think that's the best example of the year before. They were, I think the word putrid probably was fitting in 2023. They hit the portal hard, but they hit the right players. They got the quarterback in Sam Levitt. They had obviously Scatabo, but they brought in players all across the board that fit what they wanted to do. They didn't overpay, but they found a lot of quality. And I think we're going to start seeing, outside of maybe 5 or 6 guys in the portal, I think coaches are going to start saying, I'm going to start looking for quality players who are going to fit my program for a year or two, and then make that roster really build instead of overpaying for one guy and then really being exempt. And the teams we're going to talk about here tonight are quality football teams with great leadership at the top. And like that is a common denominator we're going to talk about, where the leadership drives the focus of the program is what is going to carry these teams into being successful, not just in 25, but I think even beyond.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these 5 teams because each of these 5 teams had a moment in the sun last season. They had one way or another, whether it was a team that came out of nowhere, made the playoff, or pulled off remarkable upsets that were arguably the most. I would make an argument that there's one team on here that were the most entertaining games to watch. They didn't always come out on the right end of them, but it was at least really enjoyed watching the football game. If you're just a fan of football, don't have a specific team, I really enjoyed watching them. I'm fascinated to see what happens with these teams this year, because I think that we see them build on some of the momentum they had last year. Do they regress to the mean, or was last year just an aberration for some of these teams that would just wind up like, oh yeah, you're a flash in the pan and you're no longer that great?
They picked Drive because they were more of a mid-major, but a non-national championship contender where people are like, right, oh yeah, I've made my splash. I'm going to go get some money somewhere else and play for a bigger program. So now how do I replace that? Or do you have guys they showed development, they showed marked progress last year, and they can take that next step to be, I think there's a phrase, good to great. Can they go from good to great in that next level?
Yeah. Well, folks, if you haven't already, make sure you check out our 25 to 21. We're working our way all the way down to our number 1 team. Just to recap, our 25 team was Texas A&M, the Aggies. Oklahoma Sooners came in at number 24. The Nebraska Cornhuskers were 23. BYU Cougars were 22. And the Tennessee Volunteers sat at number 21. Let's dive into it. Fresh, coming in at number 20, it's the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. We all remember Dublin, Ireland last year. I think that was the lock of the century for me and you. We were so confident that Florida State was not going to cover that spread. I remember just being absolutely certain about this team. And then I would argue one of the greatest regular season games was played last year with Georgia Tech. A little tough for you, and again, probably aged you by about 3 or 4 years. But for people who just like great competitive back and forth football games, that was seriously one of the most entertaining football games that I have ever seen, going well past midnight there. King is back. Jamal Haynes is back. Those two, that tandem can be absolutely dynamic for them. And I drew a giant circle around it. I said, sleeper team right here. What you got for Georgia Tech?
I thought you hit the nail on the head. This team, they showed marked improvement in that Florida State game. And it was in the line of scrimmage we saw the most power. They didn't care. They were going to run the football. They were going to be aggressive. They were going to be physical at the line of scrimmage and dictate that way and make you play on their terms. That game, I bet, I'm going to say right now, I bet Georgia Tech outright to win that opener in Dublin, because you could have looked at the Florida State team after that bowl game beat down and all the players leaving and the whole nonsense of the offseason about all that. That added something. It's like, all right, nobody's even talking about us. We could sneak up. They played a pretty solid season. They almost had, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they almost had the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I believe so.
And they gave them a battle in Atlanta, getting Georgia, taking them to 8 overtimes. And we can speak to the overtimes and how they're all 2-point conversions. And that was another ridiculous thing. But it just shows you the growth that Brent Key has made with that program. He built it in his image. He's a former player, former offensive lineman for Yellow Jackets. And the players that embodied him as that mentality, we are going to be old school, late 80s to early 2000s through the Calvin Johnson era, even maybe some of the Paul Johnson era, where they were a very good football team. They've had some tough times to play the past 7 or 8 years until last year, but it kind of got them back to where they showed they can win at Tech if they play their way. And not just Brent Key being the focal point and the leader as the head coach, but Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, just the way he was able to scheme up offense using Haynes King, quarterback, who was beat up a lot last year and played through a lot of stuff. Jamal Haynes at running back, was very, very useful in all different ways. Different plethora of receivers in the offensive line, the tight end, getting them all on the same page, running same formations same plays out of different formations, a lot of motion. The coaching up of that team and how to call and being positioned to be successful help that offense be able to score points and dictate down distance. And back to the opener, we're going to beat the drum on that. The way that offense late in the ballgame versus Florida State and that vaunted Florida State defense, and somebody even said they had the best defensive line in the country, they were beat to heck because it was trap plays, it was pulls, it was powers, it was whatever they wanted to do, they did. That same mentality now is going to have to carry forward. You mentioned Haynes and King, but they have Rustford coming back at receiver amongst other some guys. They do have to get some of that tight end development, and the offensive line only returns 2 starters. So how quickly can they get not just 3 other stars in the offensive line, but some of that depth ready to go? Because injuries will happen throughout the football season. They get those guys up to speed. They'll be able to continue to keep competing and moving forward. Defensively, they returned 4 stars on the defense, but they had a ton of depth coming back. So who's on that second tier, who got a lot of reps and playing time, now being elevated as well as some incoming transfers and some freshmen. But one thing that kind of shocked me that there was a defensive end who was pretty successful in transfers out to Texas Tech, I believe, if my mind's serving me correct. So it's kind of like going back to the early point. We showed success, but then one guy's they're not graduating, they're just transferring out. You're kind of like, well, I guess they're chasing off of where they were at last year. But what way can we keep those guys in the program to have them be successful, or how do they replace that productivity? The secondary has the majority of the stars coming back, so hopefully that layers on a veteran aspect for Georgia Tech. Obviously, when the transfer portal give us and take us away, they did bring in, keep an eye on, Mercer transfer Braden Manley. He was the SoCon Defensive Player of the Year last year off the edge, brought a lot of pass rush menace from just down the road in Macon. If he can come up there and play at a high level in the ACC, he'll make up for some of those departures and really be able to contribute and move forward. I think he also fits that lunch pail mentality that Brent Key has. Looking at this team, though, you open up in Colorado now. It's not going to be the Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Colorado, and there's a lot of receivers they're going to have to replace. It's still going to be a Colorado team you're going to have to go out there who's, I think, depth has improved in the past couple of years. How do you handle that trip for week 1 out there to Boulder? You got to host Clemson week 13. We're going to know a lot about Georgia Tech right off the bat in those first, 3 or 4 weeks. Then you got a 4-game stretch of Virginia Tech, at Duke, Syracuse, at NC State from October 11th to November 1st. They're going to have to be ready and be up to play every single week. And then you also have Boston College and Pitt, which I could give them fits. And then obviously Georgia and Ben's there over Thanksgiving weekend. So this schedule is going to be a challenge. It's a team in the same mindset, and they have a brotherhood to play together the entire time. I think they have the physicality to handle it. Can Haynes King stay healthy, and can the defense get some stops when they need it? And If they can, I think the offense overall will be very successful, be able to put some points up and play at their own pace of 3 yards in a cloud of dust, time of possession. They're not going to win games 50-0. They're going to win games 24-20, 24-17, 21-13. They're going to grind it out battles. You have to bring your lunch pail. You got to be ready for a slobber knocker or a fair because they're going to make sure you remember playing them. That's the biggest challenge. Is, are you ready to get on their level of being physical and playing the high level football game week in and week out? And I think Tech and Brent Key and that entire coaching staff and that team has what it takes. So having a 20, I think, is the right spot. And it's a couple breaks go their way, especially early. They could be a contender for the ACC.
Fresh, the one thing I put a question mark for offense on the offensive side of the football is how do they replace Eric Singleton Jr. transferring from Georgia Tech, use their lean receiver going. And again, this is the idiotic thing about the transfer portal NIL situation. You transferred over to Auburn and okay, say what you want about Auburn. To me, that screams like you just took the money and run. You're not going to, and that's fine. Like, kid, go get as much money as you can. If you especially know kids will get their draft status early in their junior year. And if they're saying, hey, man, you're going to probably be an undrafted free agent, like your odds of going to a league are slim to none, favoring none, then by all means, get the money while you can, earn off whatever your potential you're able to do. But again, if you're looking at a situation that is good for you, I don't see Auburn being the great situation. So I would love to an answer for that. Like, why did you transfer in regard to that situation? But going on to the defense side of the football, I think this Georgia Tech offense is not really going to miss a beat. Singleton is like the biggest thing that they got to replace, but I think they can get a lot of his production out of Rutherford, as you brought up. The question I have is the defensive line able to pressure the quarterback better than what they were? Only 18 sacks on the year. I believe that they were +1 in the turnover differential. So they weren't forcing a lot of pressure. They weren't forcing turnovers there. If Georgia Tech really wants to reach the potential that I think that they can reach, that's where it's got to come. I love that you brought up the kid from Mercer. They got a couple other guys coming in on the defensive side of the football. They did lose height going from Georgia Tech, who went over to Texas Tech. But like I said, they got Stone coming in from Ole Miss, who'd be an interesting guy on that defensive line. So if they're able to get that pass rush there. I'm saying their toughest stretch, the month of November, 2 road games and kind of I think they're playing at the Benz is for Georgia Tech, Georgia. So you take a look, got to go to NC State, got to go to Boston College in early November. You get Pitt at home on the 22nd before playing the Georgia Bulldogs. Fresh, I'm going to say this right now. I think this year, Georgia Tech is going to play for the ACC title. Hear me out. They miss Miami and they miss SMU during the regular season. Top 3, they'll play one of the top 3 teams. Syracuse, they get in Atlanta. They don't have to travel up to the Dome in late October. And they get Virginia Tech at home. Their road games are Wake Forest, Duke, and NC State and BC. BC, we'll see how they play out. I'm intrigued. I like Bill O'Brien as a coach, but again, I need to see Boston College before I even say that they're going to be in that game. I think best case scenario, 10-2, playing for the ACC title. I think they would lose the ACC title game against Clemson in a rematch. Worst case scenario, if some things don't click, if they don't get the defense going, even with all of those pieces, with their schedule being as easy as, I got them 8-4. Worst case scenario.
I'm right there with you. I think 8-4 is probably the floor from this football team.
Right.
I'm going to say it right now. If they're going to go to Colorado and they're going to beat the Buffaloes, because they're going to be breaking in either it's Cade Salter from Liberty or they're breaking in the freshman. I got a feeling both of them play, but the offense is not going to be the same as the past years. They're going to have to do a lot of rebuilding. I see they're going to be much more physically prepared for week 1.
Yeah.
The Syracuse game, I think, is actually going to be, outside of the Clemson game early, that Syracuse game is going to be the biggest test to sort of see where the team is at. The scary road trip of all, it's not NC State for me, it's Duke. And the reason why it's Duke is because Manny Diaz and that team, he can coach them up. I think being at Duke is a lot. The light's not as bright as it was at Miami. That allows them to get guys in there and play, and the defense will be fine. And they'll be able to scheme up some defense that might be able to cause some problems. So that one they're going to treat it as like it's a sleepy day. We're going to Duke, not we're going to NC State. So that one I think might be a real tricky mid-season matchup of traveling there to Duke and having to deal with that matchup in Durham.
That would be an interesting one. I can't wait to see what Georgia Tech does this year. Really high on the Yellow Jackets. I think they could be a fascinating team to watch. All right, Fresh, let's go to our number 19 team. I guess we could call them one of the two surprises of the year, but I don't think either you or I were truly surprised at the success. We thought that this team could be very good last year. I don't necessarily pick them to make the playoff, but hey, why in the world would you not take any ACC money to join the ACC? It's the SMU Mustangs. Does the story continue? Because they return a lot. Kevin Jennings is back. Guy replaced that Bashard Smith. But, this SMU team, I'm looking at their schedule early on. They got some places to repair, but you got a very easy early schedule. That Baylor game is fascinating to me. And then you got to go to keep it funky like a monkey down Fort Worth, Texas at TCU. But I think they can work through some of those problems early on. What do you got for SMU?
Well, you mentioned Jennings coming back, which I think is huge, and he makes strides. I think Clemson ACC title game and then going to play Penn State were eye-opening for the whole entire football program of where they are and where they need to get to, but in a good way, where you sort of like, all right, this is our litmus test.
Right.
Okay, we had a great year. Nobody expected us to be here. We jumped out. We know what we are. We know what we can improve on. We're ahead of schedule. Let's move forward. Returning 5 starters on offense, including Jennings, but obviously replacing Smith it's no small task.
Yeah.
Now defense, returning only 2 starters, but it's probably not a terrible thing because when they did have to, their schedule was relatively easy last year compared to what it is this year. And the 72 points in the loss to Clemson and Penn State at the end of the year, them getting owned at the line of scrimmage in both those games, I think maybe only returning 2 starters, what depth guys maybe step up from second to first, and then going obviously for the transfer portal and recruiting, give them a new perspective. All right, we've got to be a little more focused on getting ourselves offensive and defensive line, owning that line of scrimmage, because if we're going to compete at the playoff level, because now your expectations change. It's not winning in the American Conference. It's not even just winning in the ACC now. It is winning at a national level because you've already made the playoff. Anything less than a playoff appearance, anything less than the ACC title is actually a disappointment. And that you're held to that standard of that's where we have to be. So we have to make sure we're ready to go. So this is on Rhett Lashley and that entire staff and that recruiting program and the entire team to get themselves to a point where they are sustained. There's no lack of money coming through Dallas for the SMU Mustang football program, but it's turning that into wins now. How do you take offensive savant in Rhett Lashley, but now become much more of a football, get this entire team well-rounded? You've already announced your status, announced your claim. Let's go out there and get it at a higher level. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't think that they have the horses right now, offensive and defensive line, that have shown from what they had in the past to get them there. So this is going to be a show me from this year of there's raw talent. There's offensive leadership from the quarterback position and the head coach. There are playmakers at receiver, but how do they take that lessons learned mentality from last year and grow going forward? The schedule, you got Syracuse, Louisville, Clemson, and Miami in the regular season. Then you have the toughest stretches at Clemson, at Wake, Miami, and at Boston College. And the reason why I threw that in there is because you're at Clemson, at Wake, you got to play a very good football team. You got to go to the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, play Wake. You host Miami, and then you got to go up to Boston College late in the season where the weather's probably going to be a big factor. This team now, they're not going to have the gift of being overlooked. When everyone came in last year, we thought Florida State, Miami, NC State had a lot of high hopes. Clemson was kind of like, maybe they're the 4th team. Nobody really put the focus on. Now the target's on your back. You had 2 losses on the year. You got undefeated regular season. You are now the hunted as opposed to the hunter. And this is also going to be this is the mentality of this football program of how do you now live with expectations? How do you live with everyone now trying to get you where you're not under the radar? You're not a cute little program that has a lot of booster money. You are now supposed to be a legit national contender for a playoff spot. How do you maintain that? So this is in the offseason, how motivated has this team been? Did they hit spring practice hard? Did they hit their offseason workouts hard? Are they prepared in fall practice? And do they treat every single game as a business trip, as not like, it's fun to play football, but now you're expected to win. And if you don't win, that media in Dallas, you're going to start getting called out on it, because if you want to hold the money, you want to pound your chest, you have to now accept the responsibility. And I'm going to compare this. I know it's a college football broadcast, but Juan Soto in the Mets gets paid all the tons of money. He could have played somewhere else, maybe less expectations, or maybe hit himself with the Yankees, but Aaron Judge is the focal point. Here, goes to the Mets, wants to get all the money, and struggles out the gate because the expectation is different. If you look at his stats, he was hitting just like he was last year, but because the money getting paid, it's a higher expectation. People expect more results. SMU, these boosters now expect more results because they've already seen the playoffs. They've seen the conference championship game appearance. How do you live up to that? And that's a mental thing where Rhett Lashley and that coaching staff and those leaders on that football team have got to keep them. So that's the biggest test for me. I think talent-wise, they're going to have guys in the perimeter who can play. Can they win the trenches, and they can keep a mindset as a team and as an organization to play football week in and week out, one game at a time, and live up to expectations, which is easier said than done. But that's what it takes to be a national contender. Ohio State deals with it. Georgia, Alabama. If you're a national contender team, core of your program is ready to embrace that moment week in and week out. And that's where SMU's got to get to if they want to maintain where they've already seen as a playoff team.
College football is more fun when SMU is good. I'm interested to see how they replace Smith. And I'm going to give you a name here, Fresh, because this kid is down out of Fort Lauderdale, originally committed to Miami, but as a junior here in the state of Florida, with all the athletes that are here in the state of Florida, this kid as a junior won the gold in the state track in the 100 and the 200. Chris Johnson Jr., 3-star prospect out of Fort Lauderdale. This kid is a blazing fast. If they can give that kid some daylight, he could absolutely electrify the SMU offense there. I'm interested to see if he's going to get the first opportunity to kind of replace Smith, if they're going to go with McFall there, whether or not that redshirt freshman's going to be able to do that. I'll be intrigued. Jordan Hudson has got to take another step, though. I'm loving that he comes back. He's got another year where he's got that chemistry with Jennings. Does he take the next step from, and again, you made the good point, like everything with SMU is going from like an okay program to like you're a good program now. I got respect for SMU. I put respect on their name, especially with what they did last year. You now got to go from good to, I don't want to say great, because I think it's going to take multiple years to be truly a great program. And obviously, I don't think that they're on their path to being one of the elite programs in college football. This upcoming year, this is where you get a chance to take that next step. And it really could be, record-wise, you're going to take a step back. But are you competitive with Clemson? Are you competitive with some of these upper-level teams that kind of have had your number? Or were you just a one-year wonder? They're not going to get 43 sacks like they did last year. They're not going to get that same type of pass rush. You talked about the kind of the players that are leaving there. Isaiah Smith and Cameron Robertson, they were contributors last year. They're moving into starting roles. I think that we could see a big thing out of them. I need to see more out of that defense. I need to see SMU really kind of just own Gerald Ford Field. That's going to be the intriguing thing. Like SMU is getting Syracuse there. They're getting Miami there, and they're getting Louisville there. They do have to go over to Clemson, but you're getting the 3 other hardest teams probably on your schedule. You're getting them at home at Gerald Ford Field in Dallas. You got to win there. You got to win in Dallas. You got to win at home for it. And I think that SMU has the opportunity to do that, but we got to see a little bit more. I got best case scenario for them. I'm going to say 9-3. And I say 9-3, they would probably miss the playoffs at 9-3. But In those 3 games, I want to see how you look on the field when you lose football games and when you win football games. Worst case scenario, the defense takes a giant step backwards. They're not able to fill in the holes. I still think this team could get to 7-5, be a respectable team, and say there's still some work to be done going into 26.
Yeah, my ceiling is 9-3 as well. My floor is 6-6, and that's just I think the line of scrimmage hasn't been taken care of, and those other teams just start wearing on them. But the lasting memory we have, you to your point about how do you lose? Are they close losses? Or are you competitive? Because the lasting memory I have is them getting the break speed off of them by Penn State. I mean, absolutely annihilated in that frigid temperature. And then the week before, that first half, Clemson was boat racing them. And they made a comeback in the second half, but Clemson was boat racing behind King Klubnik. So everyone now is like, all right, it was cute. But the last 2 games we saw when the pressure was the highest was just an epic lackluster performance. So coming out week 1 is very, very important. They need to come out strong and focused and not have extra rust. Extra rust is going to have people like, well, all right, 1, 2, now 3 is a trend. College football, big college football, media is already going to be high, but you're in Dallas. So people are going to start barking. That media is going to start asking questions. You're not going to be the darling anymore. You're going to have people getting tough questions and asking, hey, are you the right guy? And then boosters will be like, I'm giving you all this money. Why aren't you delivering in year 2? So you have to come out on fire right off the bat and avoid that third straight clunker and also avoid maybe questions certain amounts and people starting to think stuff, because in anything anyone wants to do in life, ROI is very important. Return on investment. And if a booster is giving you X amount of dollars, especially at the level of college football is right now in college sports, they want to see their team win. And if that return's not coming, they can spend that money somewhere else. So you make sure you deliver.
Yeah. And I will say there's one thing. If you are going to watch an SMU football game, if you have the chance, you need to listen to the local radio broadcast of the SMU football team. Those guys are absolutely fantastic. And it's exactly what you would think a radio broadcast out of Texas would sound like. Listen to the first half of the SMU Penn State with the SMU broadcast. Great job out of those guys. Entertaining as all get out, man. If you get a chance, make sure you do that this season.
Yeah. That's one thing about football and baseball. The radio broadcasters, give them some love.
Yeah.
Sometimes you turn the volume out to TV and put the radio broadcast up, especially if you have Sirius XM or the internet, and just listen to the guys call the game that way. It's a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at number 18. It's the Kansas State Wildcats. Everyone was super high on the Wildcats last year. Avery Johnson at the beginning of 2024, people were talking about him as a possible sleeper Heisman. I wouldn't be shocked. I think that people are now sleeping on K-State because last year did not go well for them. But they're going to have so much to prove week 1 in Dublin versus Iowa State. Avery Johnson's back. Only 58% completion rating last year, 25-10 to touchdown interception. And they got Dylan Edwards. But the weird thing is, I found a stat as researching K-State. They never gave it Dylan Edwards, who wound up running for 196 yards in their bowl game. They never gave him more than 8 carries in a regular season game last year. So K-State, I'm leery on them, but then I also have like a little bit of a thing circled on my notes here.
Last year, there's a lot of pressure on Avery Johnson. He had the purple vehicle and he's got his NIL deal. And I think the one thing that's underrated of why that offense is struggling, Colin Klein was gone. He had just gone down. And I think that disconnect at the quarterback position, him being also a former K-State quarterback, you saw some of the questionable calls, questionable decision-making, guys getting comfortable with what they can offer in the play calling. And DJ, the reason why Edwards didn't get much is DJ Giddens had a lot. But so the other counterpoint of this is if you have 2 successful backs, you're going to be in good shape. You keep him fresh as the entire season. So that does raise the questions. Why did he not get all those touches? And maybe put him in the backfield at the same time. Like, where was that creative approach? So this year, Now, Coach Kleiman is a fantastic head coach. Has proven it for many, many years at different levels and won national championships. What say does he have in this entire staff to implement a much more simplistic offense or a different flow of game plan that fits the running back game, fits the receivers, fits Avery Johnson? If Avery Johnson's your franchise quarterbacks in college, he's your franchise quarterback. How do you put him in to be successful? What place does he enjoy? How does he operate the best? You've made your bed with him, but now you have to make sure that he is successful with you at the helm and the play calling. And he's not questioning, well, why is this? Or I don't like this formation. I don't operate this, but the coach is calling that. Got to get in sync from that perspective. Got to get the receiver talent at K-State. I want to see the guy. You need to step up a little bit. We need some more flash. There's some development. Who's gonna show up and help your quarterback and help your running game? They've had some tight ends in the past, but you need a little bit of both to offer diverse options for your offense. And overall, they have 6 starters returning on offense and 5 on defense. So there should be a lot of veteran returners who can keep their team's mindset a little more locked in as they move forward. And that's what you kind of need. We talked about it with Georgia Tech having a mentality of how do we police ourselves? How do we take ourselves to the next level? Also with SMU, the same trait applies here. It's a lot of leadership returning. Now it's time to put up. We have the skills. We have the leaders. We have the experience. Now we need to put it all into play. I am worried about the receiver depth, but there's one guy I do want to call out, Sterling Lockett. So if you know Kansas State football, the Lockett name is pretty powerful. His dad's Kevin Lockett. His brother's Tyler Lockett. His uncle's Aaron Lockett. They're all Wildcat legends. So there's some lineage here. That's a lot to live up to for Sterling, but if there's any family name that's going to be invested to make sure they contribute for that program, it's going to be him. So I get the feeling this year is going to be a breakout year for him to really get much more involved in the rotation as a receiver and be a big game player for him and offer some off the top, offer some slot playmakers. Lockett family, those guys, they do it every single way possible. Jack of all trades on offense. So I expect him to be heavily involved and really grow as the season goes. Offensive line. Last year, there was a lot of issues with the offensive line. The run game was because of the lack of protection, the lack of run blocking, lack of execution. Avery Johnson was rushed in a lot of situations. The play action game didn't really evolve because of the deficiencies there. Bringing in 4 transfers and 2 returning starters, you're going to have a chance to really build off of that and retool everything and hopefully get it in sync, ready to rock and roll. Now, sometimes you bring in transfers like, oh, they're coming from Slappy State or wherever, and maybe they're not looking just a depth guy and not really the starter. These transfers are coming from Pitt, Penn State, Ohio State, and USC. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are. If you're going to transfer from Penn State, Ohio State offensive line, he was probably good at start in other places, but he's going to be a 4-star at worst coming into the program. So you're going to get some talent. So how fast do those 4 transfers and the 2 returning starters gel and get themselves ready to rock and roll for week 1 and moving on beyond? Defense, as well as receiver depth, the defense, even though you return 5 starters, I'm still kind of worried because your 2 top tacklers and your 2 best players in your secondary are gone. So how do you replace them? Yeah, you have 5 starters going, but your 2 top tacklers at linebacker, your starting safety, and your starting studs corner are out the door in the NFL. Who's going to step up and be the leader of that defense? Who's going to start barking out in the huddle? Who's going to be the inspirational one in the meeting room, calling them out, getting them in the right formations, making sure everyone's paying attention? That's what I want to see. The self-development. The coaching staff's going to be great, but successful football teams at any level are player-led. Successful teams in general, competition you're in, the coaches can only do so much. The players have to police themselves. So who on this team is going to rise up on the defensive side of the ball and maintain that standard for Kansas State? They are a blue-collar football team. They're always being a blue-collar team. They're a team that's underachievers. When Bill Snyder was there, the one thing they were able to do is hit the JUCO side, hit a bunch of transfers from smaller places, develop the guys in the program, or use the walk-on program they had, which unfortunately no longer truly exists in college football. But using guys who are there to overachieve and work hard, under the radar diamonds in the rough. Which one on this defense is going to step up, or how many of these guys are going to step up on this defense to lead them there to the promised land? Is their talent? Yes. But how do they get themselves ready to play at a high level and compete for a Big 12 title? I trust the coaching staff to get them in position to be successful week in, week out, but can the players get themselves there ready and if they put the work in? It's up to 4-game stretch for me, October 25th through November 22nd, at Kansas, Texas Tech, at Oklahoma State, at Utah. If they can come 3-1 out of that, they're probably playing for a Big 12 title. 2-2, you never know. 1-3, your bags are probably packed and you're getting ready for a bowl game somewhere in Florida or Arizona. So How do they basically finish out that year in the toughest stretch of the season when people are banged up and they're already a physical football team? How are you able to play the full 12 game schedule and then beyond? As we saw last year with the playoffs obviously being expanded, you can afford a loss or two, but the health of your football team and the momentum of your football team going into the playoff, going into November is what's most important. If you could keep yourself healthy and maintain the bumps and bruises, because everyone's going to be beat up, gain yourself momentum and get yourself through, you're going to be okay in the playoffs. But you have to survive November. And that's why they say be remembered in November. And that's where all the successful teams really take the next step and separate themselves. I think at max, this team's a 10-2 team. At bottom, I think they're 7-5 team. There's a lot of fluctuation in how fast this entire team can get themselves glued and ready to rock and roll.
I think for me, comes down to the defense. And again, I'm glad you brought up where their transfers are coming in from. It's so fascinating that we're talking about guys who haven't been buried on the 2 deep or 3 deep since they were freshmen there. We're talking about guys who are buried on rosters at elite level programs and are transferring over to K-State. You take a look, go on 24/7 and look at where all of K-State transfers have come from. Majority are coming from places like you said, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, some really high quality programs that it means those kids were good enough coming out of high school to at least receive an offer from that school. So it means that there's talent there. It's whether or not that talent has been unlocked and cultivated and those guys have developed, or whether or not they're dealt with injuries or what have you with it. I think that we're going to know so much about K-State at the very start of this season. Last year, last week of the season, lose a nail biter to Iowa State. Okay. Caps off a rough year for them. K-State winds up, I think, they lose 4 games last season. You take a look and they lost 29-21 on Saturday night, Thanksgiving weekend. And you look at that and you look back and you say, man, that's just a rough game, rough way to end the season. They got ready for the bowl game and really struggled with Rutgers. They come out and put the boots. And again, I like Iowa State quite a bit. I think Iowa State probably is the favorite to win the Big 12 this year. But if they come out and put the boots in Dublin to Iowa State, which by all means, this team is able to do that. You're not playing this game in Ames, Iowa. This team could wind up going on a run. I think one of the most important moments of this season is going to be Saturday in October against Kansas. The Sunflower Showdown. It's one of the best rivalries. That rivalry game has been extremely close. Kansas State has won, I believe, last 2, if I remember right, Fresh.
Last 2, but they won a heck of a lot of the series.
Right, they have. But Kansas has been pretty respectable as well. The thing with K-State for me is they got to avoid a bad loss in this. Like last year, that loss to Houston, they got blown out by BYU. I mean, you got to go Rice Eccles. The other thing I'm putting in my notes is after the month of September, they only have 3 games in Manhattan, Kansas. They have 3 home games in there are 5 Saturdays in 4 Saturdays in October and 5 Saturdays this year in November. And you get 3 home games during that time. Like, granted, you have your bye weeks in there as well, but that's just a rough road to go. I'm going to say this here, Fresh. I think best case scenario for K-State, if they blow out Iowa State and get that momentum going. And again, I use the word blowout. You win by over a touchdown. You cover 7.5. All of a sudden, the momentum gets rolling with them. You got North Dakota, not North Dakota State, North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks. You got Army, which is fascinating. You got to go to Tucson, and then you got UCF coming in before you face off in Waco against Baylor. If they are starting the season 5-0, they get that momentum going. That's just going to feed into them. I got them going 11-1. I don't think this is a perfect team. But if everything kind of, that ball gets rolling, the momentum gets going on it, they can get to 11 wins. Worst case scenario for me, I'm going to say 8-4. This team's got way too much talent to go anything less than that, in my opinion.
And I think that's where the coaching comes into play. Chris Kleiman's been through it. He's guided SCS national champion team. So it's not about one game. You have to play the full season. Keep your mind where your feet are at, and you'll be okay. And that opener, it's going to be a lot of hoopla. It's going to be basically the only game in town in Dublin. And I think they're going to be in a situation with Iowa State losing their top 2 receivers. How do they replicate that offense so quickly? And can K-State's defense get up to speed? So that is going to be the biggest battle. When Iowa State's on offense and when K-State's defense they have the biggest efficiency of both of returning contributions, how do they react? And that's where the game is going to truly be decided. That Iowa State offense versus the Kansas State defense, because that's going to be a lot of miscommunication, a lot of guys getting used to each other. And that's where that game will be really swung in the balance. So if that K-State defense can show up week 1, they'll set the tone for a pretty good year.
Would you say that might be one of the best coaching matchups?
I would say probably
top 5.
Top 5 coaching matchups, probably the most. If you want to go like a power ranking of underrated coaches, it's probably number 1.
Oh, I 1,000% agree.
It's Kleiman, and he had already won national championships at the FCS level, but Matt Campbell, the way they both can recruit and develop, they're not getting, you don't see them getting top 20 classes year in, year out, much less top 10 classes. It is develop. Now, it hit on transfers that are under the radar and get them to play at a high level and coach them up. And that's what it's all about. Coaching them up. You make the best of what you got and you maximize their effort.
Yeah. All right, Fresh, let's go to our number 17 team in the country. It's the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Both of us are fairly high on Texas Tech. They hit the portal very, very hard. But Morton's back for them. Coming off a year, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 63% completion rating. They got Joyner, the running back. We talked about him a little bit at times last year over from USC. The returning production, I believe Texas Tech is number 1 in the country in returning production this year. I feel like we could say the eyes of the nation for college football is upon Lubbock, Texas this year, because it's either going to be a spectacular year for the Red Raiders, or I could see this being a complete and unmitigated disaster.
You hit it pretty good. I think the first part that just caused me chaos the whole season was 5-star super recruit Micah Hudson, wide receiver, didn't play much last year, goes to the portal, spends spring in College Station at A&M, and then transfers back to Texas Tech. To me, that right there just said it was about the money. He was like, I'm going to go. It's kind of like a relationship where I want to stop talking to you for a little bit and then I make you jealous. And then, the grass is actually not as greener. So I'm going to, come beg for you to come back. That's kind of how it was. But 21 total transfers plus all the returning contributions from everyone else on that roster. For Joey McGuire, there's not a coach in America that probably has more pressure because the money that's being shelled out to win. So there's pressure on Kirby Smart. There's pressure on Ryan Day. I think that they've already proven they can live up to that pressure. McGuire, all this money being shelled out, the pressures. Last year you laid an egg. You've got to show up this year, or you're probably getting fired. So every decision he makes is going to be criticized to the utmost stratosphere, and every player. I think this is where the transfer report comes in. It's like, if we stink, I'm just going to transfer out somewhere else. Where's the loyalty? If the team starts falling apart, do I just give up and quit? I've already got some of my NIL money checked. So there's a lot of volatility that's happening right now for Texas Tech. How quickly does this team get on the same pace and ready to operate? And who is leading this team? Brenton Morton at quarterback, Barron Morton. He's been an okay quarterback in his career. He isn't nothing super flashy, but the biggest problem, he's never healthy. So can he even stay healthy this year for a full season and make this entire team go? Because if he's the number 1 quarterback and there's still some what ifs, who else is going to step in and be able to play at a high level and keep this team moving? You have 2 new coordinators. It's a new offense and a new defense. How quickly do they also get the returning players as well as the transfers all on the same page and ready to rock and roll? You have 4 new stars on the offensive line. How are they ready to be gelled? Now, anyone's truly involved in football, the offensive line, they have to play as one. It's 5 guys playing as one, having to know about pulling, how to get off the guy's hip and be under the gap, how to be able to know the spacing between each other to pass protect, handing it off, the communication aspect of it, of picking up blitz, of calling each other out, of being able to shift your attention to players depending on how the defense is coming. That is 5 playing as one. And if you can't get all 5 of those guys playing as one, they're all playing as individuals, it's going to be a lot of sacks, a lot of false starts, a lot of missed blocks, and becoming an epic disaster offensively. So there's a lot of big what ifs going on as the Texas Tech football team. They're up here because there is so much talent on the field and on the roster. And that's where the expectation comes in. But can they get it all playing in the right direction at the same time is kind of scary. You mentioned Quentin Joyner. You're replacing Tyler Boyd. That's a lot of yards. That's a lot of career rushing yards for Texas Tech. That's a lot to put on the shoulders. Defensively, Rodriguez at linebacker, and then transferred Romello Height and David Bailey. Height came from Tech, which you mentioned earlier. David Bailey come from Stanford. There's no lack of explosive players in the defense, especially at the linebacker spot in the pass rush. Got to be able to contribute immediately and get after it. I think at the utmost, this team is 10-2, and I still think early on you're going to see there's going to be some dysfunction. It's 6-6 is the bottom. So there's a very volatile spread for this football team. The toughest stretch that we're going to know in October. October 11th, they host the Kansas Jayhawks. October 18th, they go to Arizona State, the defending Big 12 champions. October 25th, they host Oklahoma State. And then November 1st at K-State. That 4-game stretch it's not just going to determine Texas Tech's season. That 4-game stretch is probably going to determine Joe McGuire's tenure at Texas Tech.
Right.
So there's so much talent on this football team. Can they get to the play at a high level? And I'm going to wrap it with this. There were some teams last year that were able to go in the transfer portal and get players and be successful, like Indiana and Arizona State. They showed that it can be done. But neither of those teams went out and got all the flashy players in the portal. I don't remember us, oh my God, Indiana got so-and-so. Oh my God, I can't believe Arizona State went and got so-and-so. But the team that did that, teams like Florida State that did that, the teams that went out and got all these guys in the portal, the flash players in DJU, and the rest of those guys were absolute disasters. So are the guys getting paid, and do they stop caring? Because at this point, if I already got paid, I'll do something. I'll go through the motions and be ready for the NFL draft. So McGuire, you've got to be a leader. You've got to be a man in that room. You've got to be a father figure, but you have a demand. You got to be a general. You got to demand respect. You get the guys to focus in and take it like a business mentality and play as one. And if a guy's not contributing, I don't care what his NIL money is, you've got to make the decision for the football team to play the better player. You can't let money determine a starting spot if the team's not winning, because eventually your job will be the one let go. So this is a lot at stake in Lubbock. They're always the overlooked football team in the state. They got to make the statement, because if they don't, TCU's already played for a national championship in the past 5 years. Baylor's had some success. I'll admit they had there's some chaos and some drama. Texas is in a great spot. A&M gets a lot of money. You've got to show up, or you're going to be the 6th best program in the state. So a lot of
SMU.
Well, in SMU. So there's a lot of pressure here. We have them both here because of expectation and talent on paper. How they actually contribute that is going to be interesting and a great story to follow all year.
Yeah. I just think of the meme of the guy just like eating popcorn at TV and having this weird smile on his face, just because I think that Texas Tech season is going to be a fascinating case study, especially for teams in the ACC and in the Big 12. Are you able to kind of recruit and hit the portal how they did? Are they kind of building that blueprint? And you mentioned this a little bit about Indiana. Indiana rated James Madison's team, but no one was really going after those players. Like Indiana wanted them, they got them, and they found Cinetti there. Texas Tech, I feel like, if they can really do something special this year, then guess what? Then I think we're going to start maybe seeing the stabilization of the transfer portal. and saying, hey, if we're going to hit the transfer portal, these are the type of guys we want to go after. We don't want to go after the flash. We don't want to go after just the name of what they have. I think that the range for Texas Tech is insane. It all comes down to whether or not the defense can keep up with them. Sometimes their defense let them down, especially in the passing game last year. Did not do a great job. I think there's a couple games where they allowed well over 400 yards passing on the season. If the defense can keep up, I don't think this is a perfect team. I put 10-2, and I put 11-1, drew a question mark next to it. So I don't know if I could have gotten 11-1, but I said, it's not outside the realm of possibility. Fresh. Worst case scenario for me, 5-7. I am saying, like, this is a team that has
fall off.
Right. It is just a wide range of possibilities for this team. And I don't know if I feel bad for Red Raider fans or if I'm kind of like, because their level of expectation is not the same as other fans. And you talked about this with some of the other teams, is when you change your expectations, like Texas Tech expects to probably compete for a Big 12 title this year. Like that's their ceiling. Maybe be in the playoff conversation. They're probably not going to get an at-large bid on this season if they don't win the conference there. Although crazier things have happened. They have talent. This is a good football team on paper, but it's got to come together. I know we talked about the 4-game stretch. I have the exact same 4-game stretch, but I actually put next to it 5-game stretch, because after going to Manhattan on November 1st, you got the Cougars of BYU coming in the following week. So it's just a brutal stretch in the middle of their season.
Is Joey McGuire the first head coach fired in 2025?
That's a great question. I'm trying to rack my brain real quick.
Not that we want to, but I think with the expectations and all the money's been shelled out, he's got to deliver. And I think that's where my perspective is coming up. Sam Pittman at Arkansas could get fired, but I think the expectations are at Arkansas right now and what the money they shelled out at Texas Tech are different.
I'll throw another name out at you. Fickle in Wisconsin. Yeah.
That schedule's pretty daunting. So I think they might give him 1 year. But if they're getting whooped up on pretty good, he might be asked to leave the state of Wisconsin and go back to Ohio.
Yeah. If he gets Buzz, your girlfriend, Wolf Ugly, then yeah. I think that he's in the top 5. And I would argue probably top 3 easily. I'm trying to rack my brain of anyone else that I could see easily be in the hot seat. I look at Norvell at FSU, but I think they'll give him the whole season. I feel the same way about Napier. Fickle would be the one. At Baylor, maybe. But I think they really like Dave Aranda for what he has done and stayed the course there. So they'd probably give him the whole season. Yeah, just going really quickly off the top of my head. Yeah, I could see McGuire being the first one fired. It's not out of the realm. It's a good.
Yeah, and it comes to you with the expectation of people are going to shell out money. And now it's not. It's a bunch of college kids. They're hanging out. This is becoming a multi-million-dollar player coach transaction. And it's out in the open. So if I'm giving my money, my hard-earned cash or however you made it, I want wins and I want lots of them. So if you aren't contributing the wins, we're going to get somebody in who's going to do that for me.
Yeah, if I'm going to give you my family oil money.
Well, you want my family oil money, I'll give you $1, and that's about it on the wallet.
Exactly. All right, Fresh. Our number 16 team, another one of the surprise teams from last year. Cincinnati did a phenomenal job at Indiana. The Indiana Hoosiers are number 16 in our preseason poll. What does Cincinnati do as an encore? And he got Mendoza, Fernando, which it's just a fun name to say, Fernando. Quoting the great Will Ferrell there. You take a look at, 30 touchdowns, 16 interceptions at Cal, completed over 66% of his passes. The big name that they got in the portal, and again, this cannot be ignored. Roman Hemby from Maryland, the running back. The dude is a monster of a running back. He's dealt with some injuries a little bit. He's big in Maryland, only had 134 carries for 634 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. But I think the big thing for Indiana is that they bring back their top 2 wide receivers. Then you add Hemby, who does a phenomenal job catching the ball out of the backfield. This Indiana team could not miss a beat. There is one thing I have on there that could kind of derail the whole season, but I'll turn it over to you, Fresh. What do you got for Indiana going into the 25 season?
Well, first off, we have Indiana football at preseason ranked number 16.
Right.
Like last year, they worked themselves up and they weren't even ranked until about mid of the year. Now,
yeah,
expectations are higher. Signetti's done a great job. James Madison did a great job last year. How does he now keep that movement growing? You mentioned 2 receivers. I also, Mikael Kamara at defensive end, solid pass rusher, really helps that defense out. The secondary, though, I'm kind of worried about. They do return 4 stars on offense and 4 on defense, so everyone's expecting it now. They saw it last year. They're taking you seriously. How do you get those new transfers? Continue to keep getting them up to speed and ready to rock and roll. This can be another great coaching job from Signetti and the staff. It's also the schedule's a lot tougher. I don't think they're a playoff team. And I'm going to say that right now, bold, irrational, they're not a playoff team because they're going to have much more competitive matchups. Their first real true competitive game last year was Nebraska. And that really wasn't competitive. It may be competitive in the tailgate lot, but not competitive on the football field. And then they showed up and they played Ohio State. They gave a battle for a little bit and then they faded. And Michigan gave them all they could handle as well. So you saw, all right, when they played Michigan, they played Ohio State, when they played Notre Dame, there was definitely some deficiencies. And if that was played earlier or more quality teams like that were playing them throughout the season, they probably aren't playoff. But you know what? They did what they had to do. They won those football games. Indiana football hadn't actually won those games. So I don't care who you're playing. They took care of business with whoever's on the schedule and they got it done. This year, they're going to have to take their game to the next level. Every single person in that locker room, whether you're returning or not, has got to now go from 80% to max effort every single week. Very similar to SMU. The expectations now of Indiana football are completely different. I'm not saying the expectations are, well, they have to go 11-1 for the rest of the next 5 years, every single year, 11-1. No, you got to be at least 9-3. Because they're going to be like, well, 2024, you were 11-1 and you went to the playoff. Where's that expectation at? And then Kurt Signetti's be held at standard. So the program has now changed because you have gotten somewhere that's been unprecedented. If you want to be a one-year wonder, you're going to prove a case of all people who said that Indiana football wasn't legit and they have a lot of doubters. You're going to make the case for them. You have got to show up and prove everybody wrong that Indiana football is here to stay. You're going to get that done is in September. You're not near the end of the schedule. September 20th, you get Brett Bielema in the Illinois Fighting Illini. September 27th, you're going to see Kirk Ferentz in Iowa. October 11th, you're going to play the Oregon Ducks. And then October 18th, you get Jonathan Smith in Michigan State. It's not an easy stretch. You've got to be ready to match the intensity week in and week out because also everybody's going to be looking at you like, well, this is a playoff team from last year. If we beat them, that shows we're trending in the right direction. You have got to hold a standard and play at a high level. Surratt, you've got to be a man. You've got to show up for your quarterback. Mendoza, you've got to now deliver at a high level. There were games where you played great versus Miami last year. I'll give you that. You threw the ball around. You made a bunch of big plays. There's some sketchy stuff that cost you a win. You've got to now deliver those upsets. You've got to be a quarterback who shows up in the fourth quarter and gets wins. Signetti, keep inspiring your football team. I liked you being brash last year because your team embodied it. Keep that brash, keep heel mentality to bring in. You love wrestling. Be the heel. And if your team's going to feed off of that and embrace it, it at least gives you guys something to fight against the world mentality. I know here Ohio versus the world, Ohio State versus the world. That's laughable. It's a fantastic football program. Indiana versus the world makes more sense because nobody believes in you. There is no one's giving you a chance. Take that on, embrace it. Make Hoosier football something to be proud of. Because right now your basketball team's trash. So you might as well embrace the football team. And you might as well spend your NIL money on football. And you might as well build something and embrace it and win. Because it is now with the expanded playoff, there are opportunities there. You have a right coach in place. This is a chance, though, to showcase that you're serious about football at Indiana. And that September stretch, early October, is going to make or break. At best, I think this team is 9-3. At worst, they're 7-5. But they're going to be there. They're going to be allowed. But I want to see how year 2 of Signetti and everyone expecting it is a big thing weighing on my shoulder of you're not jumping anyone. You're not surprising anyone. I want to see how they respond. To 9-3, I'll be a believer in Indiana football going forward in Signetti. But still, that 9-3, 7-5 window, I think losses are coming, but they're still going to be a very good bowl football team. And they're going to make it tough for some people.
Yeah. There are two things here. They have to really the one thing that they have to fix and one thing that they kind of have to do again. They're plus 15 in the turnover margin last year, Fresh. And again, you brought up that their schedule was a bit easier last season. So it's easier to play in lesser competition. You're forcing turnovers there as well. But I don't expect them to be plus 15, but I think you got to be like plus 7 or 8 in this to be as well. They were very good against the run in most games last year. There was a couple of games where they gave up 100 yards rushing, but they won the game going away. I believe that they gave up 100 yards to Maryland, but they beat Maryland by like 3 touchdowns and probably were playing their third stringers at some point last year where, you're just running the football to get out of there and go home on that one. The 2 games that they really just struggled to stop the run was against Ohio State. Ohio State ran for well over 100 yards against them, and against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, with Jeremiah Love, was able to run the football against him. They have to be better against elite level talent against the run. I'm looking at them, the Illinois game, the Iowa game, and especially the Oregon game. If Oregon's going to run the football this season and they're going to run it right at your defensive line and see whether or not you can handle it or not. In my opinion, that stretch, starting with Illinois that you rattled off, Illinois is set up to be Indiana last year. They only got Ohio State on their schedule. They have an easy road to hoe. Iowa, going to Iowa City there, difficult place to go. Iowa's not maybe as good as they are in the years past, but those kids are going to play you tough regardless as well. Traveling to Eugene, definitely not going to be able to win that football game. I think that's a slam dunk for the Ducks. Prove me wrong, Indiana. Michigan State, that's the other game I want to see. Indiana versus Michigan State is going to be fascinating because it's going to tell us we're going to be halfway through the season and we're going to be able to know, is Michigan State and Jonathan Smith on the rise with Aiden Childs and everything that they got going on there? Is Indiana, 1-loss team, 2-loss team at that time? Have the wheels fallen off? Did the things not gel together? What has happened there with you at Indiana? I think we're going to learn a lot during homecoming weekend in Bloomington, Indiana.
Definitely.
For me, Fresh, I struggle with this because I want to cheer on Indiana. And I think that Indiana fans had the best season ever last year. One of the most fun seasons that you can ever have is when your expectations are minimal going into the year and your team just blows past those expectations, not just exceeds them, just blows past the expectations. And again, guys, if you've listened to this podcast over the 5 years, you find out that I'm a Browns fan. And I have 0 expectations every year for the Browns. And when the Browns make the playoffs, like they have in 2 of the last, 4 or 5 years, those are just so much fun for me. I thoroughly enjoy the season because I just enjoy the game instead of this mindset going and expecting them to win. It's much tougher. And losses don't hurt as much. As being an Ohio State fan, I expect Ohio State to win every single game. When they lose the game, it's much harder to take when those things happen. Fresh, you can get that. You're a Georgia fan. You have an expectation to win every single football game. Yeah, you're also a Packers fan. There's a pretty high level of expectation there with Green Bay. But I should put like what? Is it the Buck? I don't know if you put the Bucks or the Brewers in there.
In the NFL, I think you expect a couple losses are going to come away. You can understand it. It's a different, there's more games. But in college, from that perspective, you have a standard of now you're expected to win. And one loss, depending on who you lose to, it either is it's an okay thing or it's the end of the world.
Right.
Start getting 2 to 3 losses, we're losing our mind. Now, the NFL, there's so many playoff teams, 2 to 3 losses, you're like, oh, we're still in the playoffs. But it's an expectation then for Indiana where you can't lose more than 3 games a year. That 9-3 should be the minimum. It should be the floor of your program going forward. And anything below that, you're now going to be criticized, chastised, etc. because we're a one-hit wonder or a fraud and you're going to hear we knew it. They weren't legit. You have to live up to that mentality now. It's a different team trying to prove a previous team's validity and success. So I will say right now, there were comments last year, as good as that Florida State team in 2023 was, when people saw what happened last year with the 24 squad, they were kind of like, yeah, well, that's what would happen if they actually made the playoff. Look what happened when they played Georgia. If they made the playoff, the same thing would happen. They weren't that good. The whole thing fell apart like the house of cards. Outside noises start jumping in when you start losing games if you're expected to win. So batten down the hatches and embrace the chaos.
Yeah, I got worst case scenario 7-5. It concerns me. They only have 3 home games after September 20th. So they only play in Bloomington 3 times. They're on the road the rest of the season. That's tough for anybody, especially with what they're trying to do. And I think that Indiana's got to thread the needle right. I would say this: Hoosier fan, 8-4. 8-4 gives me because Penn State and Oregon, like, if you're a normal fan, guys, like, and if you're a realist, like, I get it. There's homers for every team, but again, if you're a realist Indiana fan, you say use those 2 games because they're at Penn State, at Oregon there as well. If we can avoid losing, and again, I could say easily see 9-3 out of this schedule too. Again, you go 2-1, Illinois at Iowa, we'll say Michigan State, and what the heck, I'll throw in Maryland in there too. You got to go at least 3-1 in those games or 2-2 in there. 8-4 for the year. I'd say everything is going in the right direction for Indiana to continue to build what you got going on.
Yeah, you have to expect reasonable, logical expectations. If you go out there and beat Oregon or Penn State, all right, then you're ahead of schedule. But I think those two coming in 10-2. If you finish 10-2, fantastic. You lose one more game, who did you lose to? And that's really going to determine your college football playoff fate.
Yeah. I think it's going to come. I really think that it's going to come down to that Illinois game.
Yeah, I think those 2 teams are basically going to be battling for an at-large bid in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. All right, Fresh. Well, that is 20 through 16. Guys, next, we are going into our top 15. These would be our playoff contenders. Who is it going to be? Well, only way to find that out, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast from. And special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Fantastic guy, produces all of this fun content for you guys. So make sure you go into spinnablesports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of spinnablesports.com. Follow us on social media, engage with us. It's summertime, it's getting warmer. And again, Farmageddon is just that much closer. We talked about K-State this week. When are we going to get to Iowa State? Because that's going to be, little spoiler, it's a top 25 matchup for our preseason.
Yep, they're coming soon. Like you said, hit us up on social media. If you're looking for Spinnable Sports, at Spinnable Sports on Twitter. Looking for us, the Irrational Confidence Podcast, at IR Confidence Pod. We also have a baseball podcast, the Power Alley Podcast. It's the Power of Power Alley Pod on Twitter. Hit us up, engage with us. We want to hear from you. Also, don't forget about the Spinnable Sports YouTube channel. That's where you can see our 2 faces as well as other content we have across the board in the Spinnable Sports Network. and join us. Hit us up. Engage with us. We want to hear about, did we hit teams in the top 25 correctly? Who did we miss? Who too high on? Who we too low on? And any other way you want to talk about college football, we're all for it. And with that, we'll catch you guys next time. Bye, y'all.